I'm Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns, out there in our nation's capital in Ottawa. I'm here in Kelowna. It's October 20th, 9 a.m. We got a really big show as usual for you. It's all about energy. Canada headed for economic winter. Trudeau back looking for praise. Carney continues to confuse. And the big one here, BC property rights being called into question. And no King's Rally that even happened in Canada. All that and a lot more on the really big show. We're going to kick it off, though. I'm just going to play this little clip because this is what it's all about. And I don't think a lot of people don't get this, but we've said it a million times on this show. It's all about energy. Here's Jensen Huang from NVIDIA.
Of this industrial revolution. The way to think about AI is that in order for AI to be produced, you need a factory. That factory takes energy. This is one of the most important things that President Trump did for the technology industry here in the United States, is to recognize that energy is necessary for this industry to grow. President Trump's pro-energy initiatives has made it possible for us to sustain our growth. You take the energy, you put it into these AI factories, and it produces digital intelligence. We're about a couple of $100 billion into this journey. We have trillions of dollars of AI infrastructure to build throughout the next decade. And so this is just in the very, very beginning part of that journey.
We know
that's good. I just wanted to hear that it's all about energy. And guess what Canada has? Lots of energy.
But also land. Canada's got everything you need. Energy, land to build, you know, a decent road system and school system, health system, all the rest of it. Highly skilled workforce. With lots of universities, as our friend Lightning Rod says, lots of really skilled engineers and that kind of thing. But the one thing it doesn't have is cooperation from the
political
top.
Political will, right? The politics of it continue to stand in the way of progress here and developing on energy. We talk about it time and time again. We are our own worst enemy. We stand in the way because we have so much energy, and there's so much need for it. Here's the National Post putting out a piece: Canadian economy falling into recession. Blames the Trump tariffs. And this is what the Crown Corporation forecasts. Development Canada is forecasting economic growth of just 9% for 2025.
0.9.
And barely growing in the following year. I wonder if we could get
9%. I wish it was 9%.
I said 0.9. I said
0.9. Oh, I didn't hear that.
I did say the point. Yeah, 9% would be like crazy. That'd be like Turkey or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think even the Turks get that. I don't know who gets 9% growth these days. China did briefly, didn't it? But they don't get anything near that nowadays. It's just unheard of in these dark times.
We are our own worst enemies. And it just continues to be along the same path. And this is going to be kind of the theme for the show today. It's all about energy. It's all about energy and how we get in our own way. The Bank of Canada governor said he'll be humble in the next economic forecast, putting an emphasis on the risks. That's Tiff Macklin. It's surprising he still has his jobs. He's going to links the approach to continuing global uncertainty caused by, in part, U.S. trade policy. A lot of that caused by liberal policy over the decade. No Northern Gateway pipeline, no East-West pipeline, suppression of natural resources, 20 years to get a mine site built. Can we go on and on? The big fight right now with China in rare earth minerals, Canada could be a big supplier and refiner, because it's not really that the rare earth minerals are rare per se. It's not, that's kind of a misnomer. It's just that the processing them is a little cumbersome and takes some technical skill, and the Chinese have mastered that.
It's also filthy. I think that's the main reason why the Chinese took over it, because it's absolutely, it's like devastating to the landscape, and it causes a lot of pollution. So it would make your emissions look bad. Because the Americans dominated it as recently as, I don't know, the 60s or 70s or something, like really not that long ago. The Americans were the completely dominant force in processing of rare earths. It could easily happen again, but you would have to face people like, or organizations like the Liberal Party and other kind of obstacles that refuse to allow that kind of thing to happen and prefer for it just to happen in China.
Well, guess who just stuck up their hand there and said, like, we can do it for the Americans, and that is our friend that took over our canola exports as well. Our good friends there in Australia, Albanese. He said Australia can be relied on to fix China's rare earth mineral curbs.
I just think that, you know, it's the lay of the land right now. It's basically the only kind of country that can do this is an authoritarian country. So just because of the way that in the West, court system and various NGOs and lobbying groups, just the way that that works, and even just the democratic system itself, where obviously people don't like to see rivers turn red and things like that. I mean, it's understandable. But the problem is somebody has to just take the bull by the horns and say, look, it's either do this kind of thing in Canada and the US and places like that, or it's just give up and let China win everything, really, and China will be the global hegemon. Those are the options.
Well, apparently Albanese is the Australian Prime Minister is due to meet with Trump today, and he's going to pitch that the Australians can be the supplier of rare earth minerals.
I mean, to be fair, almost anybody could, really. Like,
Canada could.
Certainly Canada could.
Yep.
Yeah, Canada easily could. And Canada, not like Australia, Canada has a lot of essentially unpopulated land. But the only problem is, and it's also a problem in Australia, is that there's all kinds of claims on that land, and there's huge, really powerful green lobbies, and the indigenous movements in both countries are pretty strong and have a kind of I don't know, they have a real grip on the political elite in both countries, certainly on their minds.
Yeah, Shelley points out the UN carbon tax, and yeah, that the Americans got that delayed. That was Marco Rubio. We talked about on Friday there, so that has been delayed, or I guess delayed or kiboshed for right now, because they're going to meet here shortly in what is it, COP26? Where are they meeting again? It's in.
Didn't they already have that one?
Well, they're supposed to meet again somewhere.
Was a few years ago, I think.
Right. Well, they're supposed to meet again here. I can find it here in a second. I don't know where I put it. I had it here a second ago. But that has been delayed. We'll come back to that. Justin Trudeau was busy on X yesterday, telling everybody that 10 years ago, Canadians chose a more hopeful path. And he said he'll never forget that night in 2015, the energy, the optimism. There's a lot of Canadians that are really trying to forget that. A decade. Like, even according to your best pal there, Chrystia Freeland, a decade, a lost decade of virtue signaling and identity politics, and even Catherine McKenna throwing you under the bus. But oblivious to everything, and Justin Trudeau looking for some praise. And then another one he put out, like, he was busy yesterday. Another one he put out there, he'll never forget that energy, the optimism. A decade later, this is his claim. If you go to the next one, we lifted hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty, strengthened and grown the middle class, built a $10 a day childcare system, led the fight against climate change, advanced reconciliation, and made Canada more inclusive and fair for everyone. I don't know who he's talking to. Do you know?
Well, I feel like that line there, I'll never forget the night in 2015, the energy, the optimism, and the belief that together we could build a better future. I've lost count of the number of people that I've spoken to who voted for Justin Trudeau or voted for the Liberal Party in 2015 on that assumption that it was going to be loads better. It, like, Canada would just be this permanently rich, prosperous country, and the kind of grubbiness and the meanness of Stephen Harper, that could just be wiped away. And we could do all these great things with weed and all the rest of it, and just be a nicer, cooler country that could match the US and Barack Obama and his charm and all the rest of it. I've had that conversation with, like, literally dozens of people, all of whom have the same opinion of what actually happened and say, I regret that very much and I wish I hadn't voted for him, because none of that transpired. And then you look at the list, hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty. There are also hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people thrust into poverty. So I'm not really sure what that means.
Millions without a family doctor.
Strengthened and grown the middle class. Everybody or everybody that's obsessed with Canadian politics is familiar with the headline. I can't remember what it was. It in Time magazine or something, or New York Times, where it was like, where it was American journalists asking the question of like, how has Canada built the world's richest middle class? How is this possible, and how can we copy them? That's what the Americans were saying about 15 years ago. They're not saying that now, so I'm not so sure about that one. $10 a day childcare system. Yeah. If anybody knows anybody that's benefited from that, then I would like to hear from them. I think they're about as rare as griffins. Led the fight against climate change, hasn't even met his own targets. The Liberal Party hasn't even met their own targets. So, really? And then advanced reconciliation. Well, we're going to talk about that a bit later, aren't we? And some of the side effects of this movement towards reconciliation and what it could mean for everybody in this country.
Yeah, I mean, you can pull up chart after chart. Record food bank usage, record Canadians that can't access a family doctor, skyrocketing rents, inflation. I mean, you can pull up chart after chart after chart of how this nation is. Well, I mean, we just talked about it at the top of the show, Canada in a recession. But he didn't stop there. He also went on to say, few people have done more to advance gender equality than Gloria Steinem. Her words, her work, her unwavering belief in justice shaped and changed minds. And you know, he pitched himself as a feminist. But how many times did he actually show just the opposite? Time after time after time.
Well, right until the end.
Right, including when he was pitching a new prime minister.
Yeah. Well,
and then
while he was simultaneously...
Chrystia Freeland and asked her to pitch the budget anyway. Here, you do this as your last task, and then...
He bizarrely insulted the entire American electorate, didn't he, and said that they weren't prepared to vote for a woman. That's why Kamala Harris lost. And then proceeded to take the crown off his head and put it onto Mark Carney's head. So, whatever that means. I mean, look, Justin Trudeau, I feel like he is a bit scatty, isn't he? He's a bit scatterbrained. I think he's a bit all over the place. As David Eby said in reference to one of his policies, I think he's a bit daft. He's kind of one of those guys, isn't he? And I don't think he knows what he's going to say from one day to the next. And it's kind of, he gets a bit confused and jumbled, doesn't he?
So I just found that, that industrial carbon tax, or the shipping tax that they were trying to put on all ships at sea there, the world shipping regulator postponed a decision on adopting a landmark charge on vessel emissions. And that was all to do to the Trump administration's efforts, according to this article, to disrupt international climate diplomacy. So they even got a word for it, climate diplomacy. This postponement marks a setback for multilateral, well, I need an ANS word, environmental regulations ahead of next month's COP30 climate summit in Brazil. So COP30, not 26. So there you go. If Elon Musk builds that tunnel in the Bering Strait there, it's only 53 miles. I've done tons of research on that. That connect Alaska to Siberia is 53 miles. And the Musk has done many miles in Las Vegas there. And I think it's doable within, I'm going to get my facts better. I'm going to check it again. But less than a few $1 billion, which is like that pocket change that falls out of his pocket. And here's the thing. It'll go from weeks, like 4 weeks, to get something from one coastline to the other, to 20 minutes. And then rail from there. And then you've connected the eastern world to the western world. Huge.
It would be very cool to think that you could theoretically travel from like South Africa all the way to Chile or something and like do the whole world. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, realistically, not many people live in Alaska and not many people live in Siberia either. So it'd be quite hard to maintain infrastructure like that. Usually big infrastructure like that needs a population around it to kind of
I think the
have any chance of coming off.
The population might be optimists and a bunch of trains, high-speed rail, moving stuff at lightning speed.
Yeah, well, maybe the robots will do it for us. Robots in parkas.
But Brittany put this out to follow her on X as well. 10 years ago, Canadians voted for good hair and legal weed. And we've been on a bad trip since. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Don't forget the socks. And don't forget when he first got elected, there was pictures of him shirtless, and every country was just like, why can't we have a Justin Trudeau? Yeah, and we should have traded him at that time.
Really excited. Loads of people getting really excited because he spoke French. It's like people have no idea about Canada and the way it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was another thing, wasn't it? I can remember the American late night show hosts and all that, just like, and he speaks French. It's like, yeah, obviously. But he did have he still has got very good hair. If you look at the Gloria Steinem pictures, pretty amazing hair for somebody that's like, what is he now? He's over 50 now, isn't he? Yeah, 53. Imagine having hair like that at 53. You got to give him that.
And we'll do more on this, but that tunnel from Alaska to Siberia could well change the economics of the world. And that could stop the war in Ukraine too, because I think Putin might see some dollar signs. They're the ones that asked for it. Some of his aides have asked if Elon Musk could build the tunnel connecting those two worlds. I mean, it would be a boom for economy. You think of all the minerals and metals that are in that part of the world, and gas and oil and all that stuff. It would definitely
where
enrich
their greatest treasures are. Their greatest natural resources are in Siberia. And that's one of the struggles that they have, is trying to like get it somewhere, because it's too expensive to build the pipeline infrastructure down into China.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they do have, I think, one pipeline now, one in production, but it's like basically impossible for them to get all their assets there.
There used to be, about 150 years ago, there was a saying was, "Go west, young man, for your fortune." It'll be go north for opportunity.
Well, it was that once upon a time as well, wasn't it? Klondike Gold Rush and all that. Our best
Ron
friend,
Butler,
Jack
another guy I follow on X there. History will be the judge of your time in office. You'll be judged harshly. Yeah. And I would have to agree there, because here's the next chart that's put up there. In 2013, just before that famous day when he won that election, Canada was number 5 in the world according to this Quality of Life Index. After a decade of the Liberals, number 33. Next chart there, Nick. There you go.
Wow. Glory days in retrospect, at least economically, looking at the data.
But I can tell you that the people that did get rich, the policies, if you put underneath Justin Trudeau, if you put the mantra underneath them, liberal policies for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many, everything works. Everything makes sense. Mark Carney, when he ran for election, let's listen to what he says here. He says, let the consumers judge him based on how the grocery prices and that. So let's listen in here. Brian Lilly and the food professor have a chat after they play this clip here from Mr. Carney.
He told people to hold them to account based on the price of their groceries. Check it out.
Well, I think the way Canadians will hold account by their experience at the grocery store, when they're paying their electricity bill, when they or their children are looking for a place to live. So it will be their experiences how they will they will form those judgments, and then of course accountability comes at the ballot box.
Well, the new food inflation numbers are out. Well, overall inflation is at 1.9%, driven mostly by the price of gas going down in August, but food inflation is at 3.4% overall, 3.5% for groceries, and then you get into some categories like meat, and it's 7.2%, 12.7% for beef, and there's some that are even worse, but I'll save those for our guest, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, visiting scholar at McGill University in Montreal. Sylvain, you were kind of expecting these numbers, weren't you?
I was, unfortunately. And we've been saying it since, I guess, March. On March the 4th, if you recall, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau decided to implement counter tariffs against the U.S., making Canada the only other country than China to do that. And since the beginning, I've always thought it was a bad idea, especially when it comes to food. And
but how does that affect our food? Because most people are just going to think that we tariffed, steel and aluminum, the things they put tariffs on for us.
we were in breach of CUSMA. And this is something that a lot of Canadians didn't realize until probably this summer when, I mean, a video went viral this summer, if you recall, filming the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, stating that we were in breach. And he was right. Finally, someone said it. And it impacted many, many verticals at the grocery store, including coffee, tea, pasta, spices, nuts, lots of goods, of course, citrus, some fresh products, not a whole lot, but some fresh products. And so it was just a matter of time before we saw food inflation being impacted by counter-tariffs, and that's exactly what we got in both July.
Anyway. Cut this off here. But yeah, again, self-inflicted, as usual. We self-harm, and it's cost Canadians at the grocery stores. And there was a lot of whitewashing goods, though, too. A lot of goods from other places that were put the Canadian label on as they ran this Buy Canadian thing. And kind of a mess, actually. Just an absolute mess, right?
Yeah. I mean, there is some important context with the beef, specifically beef.
Yeah, there's some
drought. And that's to do
with,
drought, and something happened in Mexico, didn't it? There's like there's a bacteria or something, or some sort of flesh-eating disease that has really harmed their herd.
We got something new that we're going to try here. We got a reporter out at down at the police station, the RCMP station here in Kelowna. There's a rally going on right now to save the ostriches, and they've had a demonstration down there. And Corvin's waiting on the line. We'll see if we can cut him in here and ask him what's going on down there at the protest rally. Hi, Corvin. What's going on down there?
Hello.
Can you tell us what's going on down there?
I guess here I'll flip my camera here, give you some better details. But so we got behind me. There's a whole bunch of people dressed up in. We got costumes, a whole bunch of signs that say "Stop the Cull." Everyone's here in support of the BC Orchard Farm in Edgewood that the CFIA is planning a cull. As you can hear, there's lots of honking, and we got lots of supporters here. One supporter, Jim Kerr, he's expected to be here. He was arrested on Friday for feeding the ostriches and then let go right away.
How many people are there? Is that about like 50, 100? What does that look like?
I'd say right now we're at about 50, but it's growing pretty quick. It's only been on for about 20 minutes.
And did you get to talk to anybody down there, like Blake or Jim Kerr? Or?
Yeah, I spoke to Blake, and he said the goal of today is to raise awareness of the event because the farm is so tucked into the mountains.
I imagine you're going to put a story together. We'll let you do that, and we look forward to your story later and your comments from Blake and Jim Kerr there on Save the Ostriches in a protest rally going on right now down there at the RCMP station here in Kelowna. We're going to go back to our show. Thanks, Corvin.
No problem.
And he's back. So yeah, so that Save the Ostriches protest rally going on. I mean, everybody seems to want to dress in costumes. We're going to talk about it later. The King's Rally, too. It seems like, what's with the costumes? I don't get it. But hey, I guess it's a...
Well, one thing we've learned from this news story is that people really like ostriches.
It's definitely been like there's that core group that have been very attached to this cause. We've asked for a live stream interview from several of them and yet to get to anything. So, I mean, they text me and they tell me about what's going on, but they don't seem to want to go and do an interview, though.
Yeah, I think they're pretty busy, aren't they? And they're quite sort of stressed out with with the cops and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they also in the age of social media, they get to kind of speak to the camera, don't they? And they don't have to be interpreted by anybody. And maybe a lot of them prefer that.
I think somebody said something about why not try Antarctica too, but I think the key thing about the Bering Strait thing is 53 miles. That's doable. That's not very far at all. 53 miles. And I've experienced.
Isn't it? I think that part of the ocean.
And I've been in the boring tunnels twice now in Las Vegas. they are actually absolutely remarkable. You can move around Las Vegas like lickety-split there in these boring tunnels. And if you ever get a chance to go look on the Boring Company, which is Neil Musk's company, these big round wheels that just kind of just like work by themselves, and they just cut and move dirt. They use them in Switzerland too. Some other company has something like similar to that. But you and I said this is way back. Obviously, Pierre Poilievre and his team watch our show, because you said this back when Mark Carney made that speech about George Orwell. And here's Pierre Poilievre picking up on it. I'm going to play this small clip here.
Multipolarity without multilateralism can lead to chaos. It certainly cannot achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and that is catalyzing financial instruments using risk mitigation tools to better allocate risk between the public and private sector. So there's a lot of words there. What it basically means is recycling the balance sheets of our international financial institutions. So all of those activities that catalyze in flows towards the SDGs. I will reference the work that has been done and needs to be completed on a cross-border carbon market, which could close 1/3 of the climate finance gap between now and 2035.
Didn't understand a word he just said. That's okay. I don't think he did either.
That's good.
You see, people who call them...
I think Pierre goes on to say, can't understand. We said the same thing as soon as he played that, just like, what was that? And I'm in finance, I'm a CPA, and I no clue what he's saying there. Not a clue. And I think that's intentional.
He actually really did say exactly what we said as well, where he said, it seems, I think it's just the next thing that he says in this little video. He says, you know, the reason that you couldn't understand that is because that's what he wants. He doesn't want you to understand that, because he wants to he wants to behave in a covert fashion and hide underneath his words. And yeah, he cites politics in the English language. I mean, I'm not going to credit his loyal viewership of this show to politics in the English language, because I have heard him talk about that before. But yeah, I mean, when I saw that clip, I was like, have you been watching this, Pierre? But then again, this has been one of Pierre's positions for ages. So I think
it just seemed to fall in line.
Tell that the way he speaks, that's not by accident.
No.
The way Poilievre speaks, I mean, Poilievre speaks as he does and writes as he does, very much on purpose. And that is to be as clear as possible. And like I've said this many times, it's probably the most admirable attribute of the man. It's really commendable.
It is, and then the opposite is true of Mark Carney. Like most of the time, it's a word salad, and I would say that's intentional as well, because he is very intelligent, and obviously he knows how to articulate a point, and he intentionally doesn't articulate it.
But you have to do it consciously, and that's what that essay is about, politics in the English language. I tried to read that a couple of times every year, because it's almost like it's like a biblical passage or something like that. It's like a moral that you try and insert into your mind repeatedly. And it's not the only essay that Orwell wrote of that kind. There's also another one called In Front of Your Nose, which is more related to politics. But that's also relevant always and should just be read again and again and again. But politics in the English language, you can get it anywhere. It's like, just Google it. You don't have to buy a book or anything like that. And it doesn't take very long to read. But it's well worth it. But that's the thing. Like Carney, you say he's intelligent. Obviously he is, isn't he? It would be ridiculous to suggest otherwise. But perhaps he just hasn't thought about his language. Not everybody has. And that's why it's so important to read in general, I think, because you can be influenced by other perspectives.
Yeah, I think it's intentional to confuse. I mean, they talk about Team Canada, yet all the provinces seem to be fighting with each other. He's got Alberta fighting with British Columbia, and we have Saskatchewan fighting with Ontario. I mean, some Team Canada where we say it's one economy, and Alberta can't get its oil to market, and then David Eby has come out and says he's protecting his coastline, not a Canadian coastline, his coastline. And then this graphic's out floating around on the internet here. Here's this. If BC can protect the coast, they'd say it's its own. Why can't Alberta say go around if you want to truck goods to Ontario? It's just a small journey around, isn't it? You just have to go down to the Panama Canal, come up and around, and then seems fair. Okay?
Or maybe in the future, you can go up the Pacific coast, get yourself into the tunnel across from Russia to Alaska,
And then come
go
all the way
through the
back around.
north and into Hudson Bay, and then you can come down into Ontario that way.
So either we're a nation or we're not. I mean, that question has to be asked. And then, if we were in front of Mark Carney, we would ask it: is Canada a nation or not? Is it a Canadian coastline, or is it a British Columbia coastline? And do the interior provinces have access to ports to ship their goods, the goods they see fit to ship, not the goods that somebody else doesn't see fit to ship? I mean, every province should determine its own trade goods. There seems to be a world market for it, isn't there? People have been asking for it. People are willing to buy it.
I mean, it's even beyond that, isn't it? It's beyond the battle of the provinces. It's also a much, much harder question that makes people wince, makes people cringe when you even bring it up, which is the question of the First Nations. Is it their coastline or is it Canada's coastline? That's the even harder question. Because BC is, to an extent, David Eby and the BC NDP and the province itself, they're kind of taking their lead from what these First Nations are saying. If you listen to David Eby, that's what he's saying, really. He's saying, I want to block this because it'll upset the First Nations so much that they'll then kill my glorious LNG projects that I want. I want that to be on my epitaph. So really, it boils down to that. Is it Canada's Pacific Coast, or is it the First Nations Pacific Coast? Because we kind of have to have an answer to that question at some point, even though it might be quite difficult to provide one.
It definitely needs to be answered because, the contradiction's steady. They stand at the podium, talk about one economy, Team Canada, where you need to invest in Canada. And then here's the contradictions. We got Alberta fighting with British Columbia over access to a coastline. You got Scott Moe fighting with Doug Ford on tariffs. He wants the tariffs removed, and that would kill the auto sector. And there's no Mark Carney stepping in and saying, whoa, no fighting, guys. I'll decide. None of that. And the same thing, we got to invest in Canada. Meanwhile, he moved Brookfield to the United States. Most of his assets are in the United States. He hasn't moved any of them back to show leadership.
Or just patriotism. Yeah. Not even leadership, just patriotism. Patriotism means doing a certain thing, whether or not it benefits you, whether or not number goes up, number goes down. You do it because you love your country and you think it's the best thing for your country.
But what they are doing,
even though it's a minor, in the grand scheme, Mark Carney might have quite a lot of money, but in the grand scheme, it's not of particular importance to Canada, is it? But still, it would be a gesture, wouldn't it?
And for Pierre Poilievre and his team, you heard it here first. The climate grift is slowly being pushed into the media to get it palatable for the Canadian public. They're going to talk about how carbon capture is the solution, and they're going to keep pitching it. Tim Hodgson had that little clip there the other day explaining how carbon capture works in this little cheesy little animated clip. And then prior to that, they had that Tim Hodgson promoting that, touting this American company that came to Canada because all the credits are cut off in the U.S., all the climate credits, and they came to Canada for a 75% tax credit, and then also the ability to tax our oil industry at the same time. What a gift for them. And then if you go look at BAM's website, Brookfield Asset Management, you're going to find carbon credits all over it, and that's the thing they're going to pitch and sell here. And guess who's going to profit from selling carbon credits? And again, the climate grift is the trees do a much better job, and you don't have to inject it into a deep well. You heard it here first. Climate grifting, it'll be carbon capture will be the new buzzword that the Liberals will slowly drip out to the CBC and their other mouthpiece, CTV, and that'll be the kind of the buzzwords and how this is such innovative technology and how Canadians really need to adopt it and have world leadership in it. It's easy to lead in an area that nobody else wants to venture into.
I think, you're talking about the Conservatives, or Pierre Poilievre going on about that. I think whether or not he's said very much or been very clear about it in public, I would be willing to bet my house that he absolutely despises the whole carbon capture, carbon credit thing, because he's all about minimizing bureaucratic involvement in the sort of natural interchange, the natural economy as he sees it. Like, I think he's a bit of a kind of Friedmanite and a kind of libertarian. So almost certainly he'll look at that as like an unnecessary layer on top of the natural economy that kind of parasitizes on the natural economy. But I mean, that's a criticism that quite a few people have made, really, because it's obviously like an artificial construct, isn't it? Like you slap on top of one of the most important sectors of the economy.
Yeah, and we played that clip there, I think it was last week, with Anita Anand when she came out. Canada has what the world wants, and the first thing out of her mouth was wind. It just shows you where this is going. It's just absolute nonsense. And it just, like, I mean, is it to confuse people? Are they confused? Who's confused here? Because I don't know if anybody's calling up Canada for wind. But one thing that the Liberals are good at is just like waste of money, fraud, abuse of that, all the taxpayer. So here's an audit. A federal agency responsible for $60 million in a ArriveCam program has yet to fill the gaps. Why bother, right? To fill gaps in fraud detection, warned the auditors. An in-house report faulted Canada Border Service agents for being slow to tighten controls after the ArriveCam irregularities. And they say the gaps are there and had not been met for over a year, while a new integrity framework was not fully yet in place, despite increasing concerns around the integrity of the agency procurement in 2023. Why bother? Fraud risk said the agency in a typical year processes 70 million travelers and 135 million commercial shipments and collects $39 billion in tariffs. Given the extensive scale of the agency operations, fraud, either alleged or proven, can undermine its ability to meet its mandate and deliver services to Canadians. But why even bother trying to make this a priority?
I mean, it speaks to a broader kind of lax approach to the border, the Canadian border, really. It doesn't seem to be... in a way, in so many ways, Canada is still living in the old world. You know, we hear Melanie Joly, as she discovered a couple of weeks ago, that the world is changing. It often feels like Canada's still in that old world, you know, the kind of 1990s or early 2000s world. And you can't be stuck there. You can't be stuck in the past, especially when it comes to things like your border. You've just got to get real.
If you're watching, feel free to comment. We interact with the comments. We're on every morning at 9 a.m. We are definitely not the mouthpiece like CBC and CTV for the Liberal Party of Canada. Just the opposite, I guess. And if you could help us share it. They took away our audience of 200,000 with Bill C-18, and that still continues. Like, it just blows my mind on that as well. But here's this, though. The average employee in the federal government makes some decent coin, 136,000 a year. There's a little chart for you, right? There's 441,000 people, and this has grown, right? Like, the size of this workforce continues to grow, and they do okay. And then if you look at some of the recent hires there, the new agencies that Mark Carney filled with some of his buddies, they seem to be doing A-okay as well, over $500,000 each just in salary, and then there's bonuses, and then there's travel and cars and everything.
It's kind of, it never stops amazing me, really, that in this country, not the only country, but I mean, it seems to be particularly bad that in this country, public service workers get better conditions than people in the private sector. That's just completely the wrong way around, isn't it? It's
and you wonder why the federal employees are basically a lock when they did that to Pierre's riding, when they redistricted, whatever they call it. Why federal employees vote for the Liberals, because one talks about cutting and the other one talks about filling the pockets, right? There you go.
Well, it's almost like a lobby, isn't it, now, the civil service or civil servants together. They're almost like they're like a lobby, or like a kind of a group that you have to appease. But they're part of the Liberal coalition, whether they wanted that to happen or not. That's kind of become a truism now, hasn't it?
So this one here, this is another one from Holly Doan. The Blacklocks, political aides would not comment after Prime Minister Mark Carney told a podcaster he'd have police arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he visited Canada. the Department of Foreign Affairs has recently, on October 8th, expressed no interest in the question and called it a matter for the courts. But Mark Carney, when asked, he just said yes. It was just his basic answer. He didn't try to pussyfoot around it. So he really wanted to. That was the one he made clear. That was, I'd say, one answer that I can remember that he actually made clear.
Amazing, wasn't it? Yeah, imagine if we could get that kind of clarity from him on something like the Online News Act.
Or BC
the pipeline. Ferries or something
or the pipeline.
Like that.
Will you build a pipeline
now? Or the economy in general, yeah. It was amazing to see that. And the way that he answered that so quickly and clearly and sort of candidly makes me think that he'd already rehearsed that.
Even Trudeau pussyfooted around. He never threatened arrest. His only public comment in November 22nd, he said that he would respect international law. But it's the odd part, and we talked about this on Friday, the odd part in this whole thing is he's the one that picked up the phone and begged Trump if he could come to Egypt, be part of this peace deal. Like he wants to be part of that room. And that peace deal is between Gaza or the Palestinians and the Israelis. So, like how, like obviously he wasn't going to Israel, right? Because I don't think Netanyahu would, I don't know if they asked him if he'd get arrested there, but just wild.
You would assume, and it certainly seems to be the case, that Israel-Canada relations are just like in the gutter, aren't they, right now? And presumably the Liberal Party sort of higher ups that have decided on this path, they've made the calculation that it's we're getting more than we're losing in this situation. But I wouldn't be so sure. I'm not sure, because Israel is not just a random tiny country. It is a very important country in so many ways. So to completely alienate the Israelis, I don't know. Is that really to our benefit, Mr. Carney?
Well, he seemed to be adamant about it. And at the same time, that's, like even this relationship with Trump, like it seems one moment there, he's just basically, you couldn't find best buds. And then he does things that are definitely, that go against what Trump would find acceptable. So it's really kind of like puzzling for sure. And then here's, this is from one of the MPs. A Conservative motion tomorrow would force the Liberal government to release details of the deal made with Stellantis. The Liberals have handed billions to Stellantis. Now Stellantis is handing over 3,000 jobs to Trump's America. And so they want those documents. And what are the chances we get to see those documents?
Might get to see them in the 2040s, if you're lucky.
No. Yeah, it'll be surprising. I think I had anyway, it's crazy. And the CBC is like finally recognizing they have no audience left, yet they do get $1.55 billion. And now they've got a 5-year plan to win back non-users and dissatisfied users. But Peter Menzies, who we've actually gotten, you did the interview with Peter Menzies, didn't you? He's a media, or maybe you didn't.
No, I don't think so.
But he's against Bill C-18 as well, the former vice chair of CRTC. It's very difficult for anybody in Toronto to be making sound decisions. What are the interests of viewers, readers, and listeners in Western Canada, rural parts of Ontario? I mean, do you think CBC could win people back when they're clearly biased? Like, I mean, if you look at the chief misinformation officer, their number one anchor there, Rosie Barton, how many times has she made, you could say knowingly or unknowingly, like, like the trucker rally with the Russian funding, and then blamed it on Trump. She just came up with excuse after excuse of why this couldn't be Canadians doing it. They never once explored that. Even this serious allegation that Pierre Poilievre has made, it's a serious allegation that, calling for the arrest of a former prime minister. And instead of going and saying, okay, maybe there's something there, we should look at that too. I mean, at the same time, you could go and discredit what he said, but on the other side of that, shouldn't you look into it? You would think, no?
That would, yeah, you would think that. But it's, as for the question, a lot of people in this article as well, a lot of people are asking that question, like, is it realistic? Like, can CBC actually win people back? Because it's not just dissatisfied users and like people in Western Canada, it's also young people. Immigrants is another one. which for some reason they call newcomers, but immigrants. So they're not bothered about CBC. It doesn't offer them anything.
They're not the voice of Canada.
The infection has spread to all parts of the body, hasn't it, with CBC? And I don't really know if it's not just a case of giving them, it's not just a course of antibiotics. I think they need dramatic.
That young man they hired,
surgery.
Travis, which was, he says that he was a DEI hire, Travis there. And then he wanted to interview Pierre Poilievre, and they wouldn't let him. And they basically fired him, but they say he's not fired. What a mess they made with that one as well. I mean, it's clear to see where the CBC is going. Just watch it for 5 minutes, and then just how far they have fallen. How far
it's funny
they
that
have
you
fallen.
mentioned that diversity hire or whatever term you used there, because this plan includes that. It includes targets like ethnicity
That's
targets.
all they know. That's all they know.
Workforce.
Yeah. That's all they know.
Well, because they're so, I mean, I think they get it wrong in such a profound way. Just everything, not just
their
news,
arrogance,
but everything, the whole of society. They get it so wrong that they think, all right, there's a lot of people who aren't white in Canada now, right? So what should we do how do we appeal to them? It's like, all right, let's get people who aren't white and put them in front of the camera. That'll work. Oh. It's like people are a little bit more complicated than that, they're not going to tune into your channel just because there's somebody on there with like a slightly darker skin tone. That's not how human beings work. But I mean, it's that paternalistic approach, isn't it? And I think there is something to that, complaining about Toronto and sort of Eastern Canada, because there are a lot of very out of touch people there.
If you look at some of the things, I could make a list. The GEM, they won't release the data for the GEM subscribers. They say it's during the leadership debate, they're the ones that said they felt their lives were threatened, because Rebel beat them to the microphone. And then they said their lives were endangered, and so they had to somehow block. They called independent journalists like us. They lumped all of in there. Independent. They said we're not even journalists, right? Because they said that obviously, unless you're like the CBC worthy, then like what business do you have asking questions of candidates? They are absolutely. And how many stories did they do on Bill C-18? No, they just stick their face in the trough. They got during an election. I mean, this should be questioned as well. During the election, Mark Carney promised them a $150 million raise. During the election cycle, that Pierre Poilievre said he's going to defund them. One says, I'm going to defund you. The other says, I'm going to fill your trough. They win. The first thing that the CBC executive did was give the executive team a raise. Not reporters. They gave the executive team a raise, almost like a reward for helping Mark Carney and the Liberals win the election.
Yep. So somebody asked here, Joel, or Joe, can't tell what his name is there. Anyway, he asks, I've heard that if you spend 1,095 days in Canada, then you become a citizen of Canada. That's how would CBC diagnose that? They would say partially true. It is fundamentally true. If you're a permanent resident and you spend 1,095 days in Canada as a permanent resident, you become entitled to citizenship. Yeah, and I can tell you that because I did that myself not so long ago.
So young people are struggling to find entry-level jobs. It's going to get worse. The evolution of artificial intelligence has made finding a job a lot more difficult for young, especially the entry-level jobs. Well, experienced workers are having seen their employment level stay steady or even grow. People aged 15 to 24 are suffering from the highest unemployment in Canada in 15 years. It's not instead they're trying to just blame it all on AI. It also has to do with record immigration. But AI definitely not helping in that regard.
Sorry, Matt. Just got some breaking news there. Amelia Boltby, the MLA for Penticton area, isn't it? BC Conservative. She's just resigned from the BC Conservatives and asked for John Rustad to resign. So we may be now, this might be the initial tremors of the earthquake that's going to bring John Rustad down, which I think most people can see coming.
Yeah, I did that interview last week with Corinne Kirkpatrick that started a new party called Centre BC. And she says she's making phone calls, and she says she hopes that she can win people over, not just from the Conservative Party, but also the NDP, and bring people back to the center. She has a party of one right now.
There's a poll, but I think we'll probably talk about it later. There's a poll putting them on 3% or something like that, which is quite amazing because I can't imagine anybody really knows who they are. They're just looking at the word center, aren't they? Probably and saying, "Yeah, go on then."
I spent close to an hour with Corinne. It was a good interview.
And it upset someone in the newsroom was pointing out that it upset some guy that works for the BC Conservatives or something like that, who's like angry about his own party collapsing before our eyes. But this all seems to me to be trending towards the possibility of yet another election. I mean, if you're sat there in BC NDP headquarters and looking at this, you're probably thinking like, yeah, go on then. I'll take advantage of their
I think they're rubbing their hands in it.
Weakness.
And I asked that question of conservative MLAs as well. Like, I mean, as bad as the NDP is doing, EB can just point over there and say, well, you know, you may think we're doing bad, but look over there. You want that?
Exactly. And that poll seems to suggest as well that people think that. People they're really put off by that.
And here's this Mark Nixon, another guy I follow out there. He says, here's the documents for the green slush funds. He says, this is a joke, actually. The Liberals have finally released the documents. That's how we'll get the documents for Stellantis as well, likely. Just a bunch of black ink. And this is the one I'm quite active on LinkedIn. If anybody ever goes on LinkedIn, I'm quite active there. And sometimes, like this comment this guy makes, Pascal, and Elon, it says, and I agree with it. I have a mental illness that makes me think people will change their minds if you present good arguments and appropriate facts and data. But it's almost impossible with some people, right? Like you can just, I think I have a very active one there on LinkedIn. You go look at it, where there's some people there that are just completely unhinged. It's either their democracy, what they call Canada, and their democracy, or you are anti-Canadian or anti-democratic, right? Which is weird, right?
It's going to sound quite patronizing, but sort of highfalutin, let's say. But that's why Plato's Republic still, and lots of the writings of Aristotle, that's why they're still in print. Because you read that, and they were talking about this 2,500 years ago. Like, how is it possible to have a true democracy, for example, like where everybody has a vote, everybody takes part in governing the country? Because lots of people are, as you described, they're kind of fundamentally irrational or tribalistic. They're not really cut out for rulership. But I mean, it makes me feel more comfortable, at least, to know that people 2,500 years ago were talking about this exact thing. And I think Elon Musk as well takes a certain amount of consolation from that as well.
One of the I would say one of the negatives that I picked up from my discussion with Corinne is the same thing that you and I have said about Kevin Falcon. Too wishy-washy. Because I asked her that question, is Canada a nation? We seem to go round and round and round in circles. I think it's a simple question. Is Canada a nation or a collection of provinces? And that if you want to be run for leadership of a party or anything, best just be able to answer simple questions like that, no? Is Canada a nation?
She said she was Canadian first, didn't she?
At the end, but that was after spinning around and around and around and around and around, just like get to it, right? Get to the answer.
There's a lot, though. I mean, somebody here says, she's, I'm done with progressive politics. So thereby saying that Centre BC is just another progressive party. I think there is something to that. There's a lot of, if you look at, for example, what's going on in America now, where the Republican Party is trying to move past progressivism, progressive politics. It's really trying to invent a new kind of philosophy or politics, or bring a new one into the mainstream in America. When you look at Centre BC, I mean, I'm not convinced that they're doing something like that. I mean, just as an example, one of her aides, one of the people that works for the party, sent an email to us, and sure enough, right at the bottom there, you've got the land acknowledgement. That's as normal as just breathing air to a lot of people in British Columbia. they don't seem to realize that that is very much an aspect of progressivism and progressive politics. It's very recent, it's very new, and by the standards of, you know, even the last couple of 100 years, even 50 years, it's kind of quite extreme as well. It's on the extreme end of the progressive, you know, on the I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. The
this other one from Elon Musk there too, where he retweeted God Sod. He's a Canadian, God Sod there. He said his daughter's class going to a school trip to New York City. Many of the parents are incredibly upset the school would visit the United States, where there is a daily genocide of women, trans people, and people of color. The parents are not upset at what's happening in Canada. You know what I mean? Like, the media in Canada, like the CBC, if you just have a steady diet of CBC, or I think sugar pops basically, or whatever you want to call it, if it was a cereal, if CBC was a cereal, they would basically be frosted sugar pops, and it would just be just garbage, and they would just feed your mind and just corrupt your mind with this. Because if anybody thought this, that is actually happening in the United States, like, just buy a ticket and just venture down there, sneak down there and have a look. Like, come on.
But they wouldn't do that because they would fear that they would be arrested and beaten savagely by the US border guards. That word I was thinking of, by the way, is spectrum. It's very much on the extreme end of the spectrum, the land acknowledgements, as is this, by the way. Yeah. This idea that there's a genocide of women and trans people and people of color. I mean, a lot of people don't seem to understand that that is extremism. That's really extremist. It's right on the end of the spectrum.
Did I realize
that for some reason that's been marketed as though it's
Trump's administration has tons of women in roles, in firsts too, in roles, right? Like even his chief of staff is a woman, a first. But hey, let's move on to British Columbia news here. And this is stuff. This one's going to heat up. We had an interview with Jeff Moyse, an Aboriginal lawyer there on this property thing. And I did ask Brenda Bailey about it. But Richmond's mayor says the Cowichan ruling may well be one of the most consequential in Canadian history. And he said that decision by the BC Supreme Court to give the Cowichan tribes land rights in the city is one of the most consequential, and hundreds of people and their property could be affected by the ruling, which is based on the claim that distant ancestors of Cowichan once fished in that area, and that now forms part of the greater Vancouver area city. And he's really blowing the whistle on this. And I asked Brenda Bailey, the finance minister of BC, you know, we talked about capital investment in British Columbia. I said, how can capital invest in BC if this big uncertainty hangs over them? And they instructed, according to that lawyer, they instructed the lawyers not to argue extinguishment on private lands. And I think this thing has turned into a bigger mess. They say they're appealing it, but I think they created this mess, and now they have no idea how to put it back in a box.
Yeah, because they don't want to say the obvious, because that would destroy their image of, you know, being the pro-reconciliation party, I guess. Their idea of what reconciliation looks like.
And then John Rustad has come out and saying that he has a choice. He needs to stand up for private property rights or continue to sow division, distrust. And then he's because there's a lot, and this is what I talked about that Jeff Moyse, and I've asked for another interview here. We're going to talk about Haida Gwaii, that decision. He says a lot of these discussions are happening behind closed doors, and they just present it to the public after it's done. So with little input from the people of the province. And, you know, he's saying before this thing gets too far down the road where we've given away most of the province, that it should be a part of a public process as opposed to just something done behind closed doors. And Eleanor Sturko coming out as well. She was the one that was booted from the party by John Rustad recently, a very strong voice for that party. She's also calling for property that Justified will be concerned by that recent decision. This thing, it just seems, I mean, you and I, we were talking about, we've done interviews on this, several of them actually. There's a couple of really good interviews with Jeff Moyse that really explain this. And it's just starting to heat up now, though, and we did those a couple of weeks ago, right? But this thing is starting to percolate at a very high level here. We got a copy of the letter that the mayor sent out there. You want to put that copy of that letter up? I think it's the next one there. No, the next one. And then I guess there's a map. I don't have the map, but it says, given the serious implications of this court decision pending appeal, the city is hosting an information session to be held October 28th at 7 p.m. at the Richmond City Hall. So I imagine that's going to be packed. I imagine that will be a packed house.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, surely even the people that aren't inside of the green square on that map, they have to see which way the wind is blowing.
If you go back and watch
start to defend themselves.
You can go back and you can search Jeff Moyes. You can go watch that interview I did with him. Basically, those lands that the court awarded title or co-title or whatever they want to call it on these lands have a cloud over them. Like, they're be impossible to sell. Like, who would buy them? And it includes private land. And there's also land that has, I think it's a Walmart on there and a couple other stores, and then some City of Richmond lands as well. It's about 780 acres, I believe.
And
so far.
The mayor
and there's more of these cases. There's more of these cases before the courts right now.
Yeah. But the mayor's come out and he said, I'm pretty confident that this will be all right. I've heard a few people say that. Like, I'm confident this will get sorted out through the courts. But the problem is, it's going to be years because the courts operate so slowly.
The Supreme Court won't even hear it, according to Jeff, until this, completes its process here in the BC Supreme Court, which could take years still, right? Like, this could be 5 to 7 years before the Supreme Court of Canada even hears this case, because right now they would refuse to hear it, he said, because it hasn't gone all the way through.
Yeah, I would be very interested to learn the sale price of properties within that area over the next few years while this hangs over.
Well, the ones that are already like in this decision would be almost impossible to sell. You'd have to be a fool to buy it.
Unless you just had loads of money lying around and you were very confident that the
and they give you
Supreme
10 cents
Court
on the
was going to
dollar or
rule
something
in
like
favor
that.
of fee simple.
Yeah. But I've talked to developers as well, and they said that, they will take their money where there's certainty, and it isn't in British Columbia right now. And this is what we're seeing over and over. And I asked those same questions of Brenda Bailey. And I don't know if they know how to answer the question. It's a good interview, too. Go watch that interview with Brenda Bailey. It's a really good interview. That was an interview we begged for. Begged and begged and begged and begged, and we asked for 30 minutes, and then we ended up getting, I think, 12 minutes. But here's this poll, though. As bad as the NDP is doing with decriminalization, healthcare, man, we can make a list and we could go all day long, right? Investment in British Columbia, all these things. John Rustad has made it easy for David Eby. But even the BC Greens at 8%. And then that one, BC, Emily Lone, the 25-year-old there, we're trying to get an interview with her as well. But she wants to obliterate billionaires. So Jimmy Pattison, you better pack up, buddy. Well, you still can pack a suitcase.
They've had higher than that, though, haven't they? They've had considerably more vote share than that in the past, the BC Greens.
Dallas Brody pulling up the bottom of that there, right?
But yeah, remarkable. Centre BC, I'm convinced that 3% is just because of the word centre. But like we were just talking there, weren't we? Just talking about this dark shadow cast over Richmond. It's not just Richmond, is it? It's British Columbia. This dark shadow caused by uncertain property rights. And that stems from what they call reconciliation, which is, this attempt to create a modern country and all the rest of it and reconcile with the indigenous populations. But the truth is, obviously BC is particularly vulnerable because of the treaty situation, but this is across Canada as well. You have to look not
BC
just
is
at
the worst. According
the
to
laws.
Jeff, BC is kind of like in the worst shape. Like lots of Alberta, there was treaties signed already. There was the BC doesn't have a lot of treaties on the land, but part of I think again go watch that interview. Part of northeastern BC has some treaties, but most of BC didn't have that. Well, a lot of Alberta has treaties in that were signed, so all those land claims are settled.
But the thing is, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, there are the treaties, there is that legal point, but there's also, laws are made by people ultimately. They don't come from the sky, and you create laws based on what predominates philosophically among the people. And just to go back to Centre BC, a lot of people are going to look at things like the fact that their staff have like very senior staff have land acknowledgements in their signatures when they send you emails.
Right.
They're going to look at things like that, and they're going to maybe say, "Are you really centrist?" Because obviously that attitude of land acknowledgements, I know it's a tiny thing, it's futile. Lots of people like to joke about how stupid it is, but that sort of contributes to the overall culture in a society. And eventually, it is possible to go from there to a situation where you literally do give the land to certain tribes rather than just acknowledge that they have some sort of ancestral claim to it. That's the natural next step, isn't it?
Apparently Nova Scotia also has a lot of that land up for...
yeah, I've heard a lot about them.
Yeah, so again, a good interview to go watch. And Jeff Moyse will come back on. He's had lots of experience. He worked 31 years with Aboriginal law in the BC government through different parties, and also now 2 years on his own as legal counsel. But again, we look at this lead here for David Eby. Maybe he calls an election, because right now he's still beholding to the Green Party there, and like they're trying to sell this LNG now. Apparently, they got religion on LNG, and then they feel it's great, but the Green Party not buying into that religion, and kind of holding his feet to the fire on that one. But we did have, like I said, Corvin down there talking about the, he sent us a clip. I put it in there, Nick. I don't know if you can pull that up or not. Like, he did an interview there. Is that possible to pull that up? Or it's right there in this Bird Speak for Me in Silent Protest thing? Yeah, nice poster there.
Is that AI, do you reckon? Looks like an oil painting, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know, is that bird part of the No Kings rally because it's got the blue hair, ostriches? Yeah. Okay, we're going to play a little clip here and we'll see how long we go with it.
What's going on today and why did you decide to put this together?
It's just everything going on at the farm, everybody knows. And then 3 days ago, Jim Kerr got arrested for feeding birds. He didn't cross a yellow line. He fed birds and got arrested. And I snapped. And here we are. There's more people coming.
What is the goal of today?
The goal is just awareness. The farm is so isolated. I mean, a lot of people go there, but not nearly enough. And the internet's powerful, but this is the largest center within an arm's reach of Edgewood. So we can just get visible. Let's tell the RCMP how disappointed we are that they are enabling the CFIA to do what they're doing. The CFIA are the ultimate bad guys, but they are the bad guys. We're supposed to be able to trust the RCMP, and clearly we can't. They work for us. They protect us until the government tells them to attack us, and that's what they've done.
There you go. Corbin will have that story up later on KelownaNow.com. And sounds like some of those people might be in danger to getting their bank accounts frozen there, honking in front of the RCMP station. Justin Trudeau, if you're listening, you have some unfinished work to do. International news. This is President Trump on Air Force One. He always... Caitlin Collins has said, if you're on Air Force One, you're not sleeping. The guy's up all the time, taking questions from the press. Not like Canada, right? You get one question, he storms away. And we don't get any questions. And we don't get any emails answered. But Trump loves the microphone. And here's his little clip here on the No Kings rally.
Over the weekend, the No Kings protests.
I think it's a joke. I looked at the people. They're not representative of this country. And I looked at all the brand new signs paid for, I guess it was paid for by Soros and other radical left lunatics. It looks like it was. We're checking it out. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective, and the people were whacked out. When you look at those people, those are not representative of the people of our country.
Mr. President, besides San Francisco...
By the way, I'm not a king. I'm not a king. I work my ass off to make our country great. That's all it is. I'm not a king at all.
Over the weekend, the No Kings protest.
There you go. Did you realize that there was
at all.
Do you realize there was a No Kings rally in Toronto, in a country that has a king?
As well.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were protesting a No King rally for Trump in a country that has a king, King Charles. They don't even see the irony of it.
The king was in Ottawa a few months ago.
Yeah, no rally.
There was a rally. There was a huge supportive crowd when he was here.
Yeah. So
and then there was one of these No Kings rallies. Well, I want to know about the crossover. How many people attended both rallies?
This is what I mean. They've lost the plot and their minds, because it was covered by CBC. Actually sent a reporter to the United States to Washington D.C. to cover the rally. CBC sent a reporter to Washington to cover the No Kings rally. And you can see a lot of the left-leaning outlets trying to cover up, well, it was really a lot bigger earlier, but, a lot of people have already left. Some people, Gavin Newsom there was trying to put it out there with 7 million people, and just this absolute gaslighting. And again, the irony of the whole thing, you have to look at this and say, in Canada, in Toronto, they had a No Kings rally in a country where they would have been there attending the king when he attended Ottawa. You can't even make it up. There's an actual country that has a king
odd, isn't it?
Protesting the president of the United States, who was duly elected in the United States, by the way. He says he won it all, and it was the biggest win ever. All 7 swing states. And Kamala Harris said it was the closest election ever.
The Americans are a little bit silly, aren't they? In my humble opinion, if there are any Americans out there,
but at the rally,
but you are very silly about this Kings thing, and it goes back to George III. And most Americans have no idea what George III was like or what his actual policies were. He wasn't a tyrant at all. I mean, he was pretty feeble, actually, if you look at kings throughout history. But it's propaganda put out by Thomas Paine, an Englishman, contemporaneous propaganda at the time. He tried to create this idea in the heads of the colonists that the king was a tyrant. It's a lot of cobblers. And the Democrats released that little, or was it the Democrats? I think it was, released that little video where it's like the founding fathers. I don't know if you saw that. It's like animation.
No.
And it's the founding fathers fighting for liberty and all the rest of it against tyranny. It's all just mythological nonsense, really. And you would expect Canadians, of all people, you'd expect Canadians would be onto that.
Well, I watched an interview where they were interviewing, one of these left-leaning outlets was interviewing a dinosaur at the No Kings rally. And they had to jam the microphone, this big puffed up balloon head. They had to jam the mic up into the snout of this blow up dinosaur. These are the people that are at these, I saw a lot of dinosaurs, a lot of costumes. It was like a cosplay thing, the one that I watched one of those clips, and it was like the lunatic fringe then gets to go out again and dress up and use their costumes more than once a year for these rallies. And then some of them even said, I get paid to be here. I'm just like, okay, that's awesome. Right?
I hope that it was a T-Rex costume, because obviously Rex it means king. So that would at least be, appropriate.
It was more of a white Barney the dinosaur, but it wasn't a purple one.
Right.
Apparently Barney's a bad thing now, right? But
albino Barney.
Here's your friend, Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer has crashed and burned a supermajority in just over 1. And just a little chart there. Keir, I think things aren't looking great.
Definitely not. And there's something going on now. There's something really quite consequential bubbling under the surface in British politics related to China. And this trial that's gone on, and I mean it's quite complex. But right now there's an accusation against Starmer that he signed off on a document, and if he did, that it could potentially sink him imminently. So
I love.
But I mean, he's so unpopular. He's just extraordinarily unpopular.
Can you give us the impression of Keir Starmer telling you that we've had freedom of speech forever?
Donald, I just have to butt in here, Donald. The best thing about that is he says something like that. He's like, Donald, we've had freedom of speech since 1215, actually. Just completely misunderstands the history of his own country. And then Donald Trump comes out and says, I just love that beautiful voice, that beautiful accent. It's like, I mean, the audacity of Donald Trump to take the P out of somebody stood right next to him in that fashion. I just find that so funny.
He is definitely a, you know what I mean? Like, we need some leadership in, we're straight talking. Daniel Smith's a straight talker. She's definitely a straight talker. Pierre Poilievre's straight talker.
Usually, Poilievre is. He does dodge questions, and it makes it all the ugly and all the more obnoxious and obvious when Pierre Poilievre tries to dodge a question, because he doesn't usually do that, does he? And I don't know about Danielle Smith. I don't think I've followed her closely enough, but generally speaking, yeah, I think she's
a straight talker,
and
sure.
so Scott Moe.
You know what? And she has the courage, and she's doing town halls. Like David Eby, do some town halls, do some interviews.
Can you imagine that? That would be exciting, wouldn't it?
And this is a thing from Elon Musk, because there were some tweets out there showing that China is kicking. If you take SpaceX out of the equation for payload mass to space this year, China is beating the United States. Well, I mean, SpaceX is carrying the load. Again, this is the guy that the Liberal Party and the NDP would like to vilify, and the Green Party of BC wants to obliterate him by, taking all his money away.
Well, even Kamala Harris. That's astonishing, isn't it? That clip that we showed on Friday of Kamala Harris saying, like, trying to kind of make friends with Elon again, saying that actually you do have to speak to him and all the rest of it. It's astonishing that even Kamala Harris has figured that out, whereas the Canadian elite that rules this country by virtue of their glorious wisdom, their bottomless wisdom, they still think it's a good idea to pick fights with this man and not have anything to do with him.
Again, it's like he's like a Ghostbusters theme. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call when you can't get the astronauts back from the International Space Station? Who are you going to call?
Or when there's no communications for the Ukrainian military and they're panicking and suffering. Who are you going to call?
Who are you going to call when there's a hurricane and the emergency people can't get communications through? Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call when you can't get energy to some natural disaster? Who have they called? Elon Musk. And who's calling them right now? The Russians. And say they want peace. Build me a tunnel. Who are you going to call? Apparently not. Canada won't make that call, though. Doug Ford. Remember Doug Ford? Lit Starlink on fire as well. Poured Crown Royal on the ground. Good job, Doug.
He should have set fire to a Tesla, shouldn't he? But there's too many cars he has to set fire to now. You have to do Fiat and Chrysler and all the rest of it. I don't think you can do it anymore.
And there's a leak out there that says the new Democratic ticket for 2028 will be none other than Kamala Harris and AOC. And he said, if there is a God. It would be entertaining for sure.
She keeps getting mentioned though, AOC, as though it's like that there's an inevitability that she's going to end up on the ticket either next time or the time after that. I'm not so sure. Like she is a very divisive character.
She is the female Justin Trudeau. She is charismatic and can appeal to people. She sells nonsense to people, and she figured out social media. But other than that, I mean, it's just empty promises But we got a couple of clips before we're done. We're almost done here. We got a couple of clips. These are funny though. So here's a lady here she's got a Burger King there. It says no, say no to kings. So she's got a picture of a Burger King there. There's a whole bunch of the independent reporters that want to ask questions of these people. Listen in here.
No King's Day.
And why specifically are you out supporting No King's Day?
I think protest is important.
Why are you protesting?
How much time do you have?
A couple minutes. And what's the main reason you're out here protesting President Trump?
I agree with a lot of the decisions that are being made.
Is there any decision in particular you disagree with?
Okay, so I would start with, well, I don't even think it's appropriate for me to have this interview.
So what brings you out today?
There you go.
No King.
So apparently Like this is, I've seen this question asked so many times this weekend, and you got the same answer from most people. They're not even sure whether. Somebody said, "Well, I get paid," and apparently the sign is. I would think that's a Burger King. Is that what that is? Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, I would say so.
How did the Burger King? I think one of the Republican senators went to, or congressman went to Burger King and was eating a Burger King. He said, "If you don't want a king," and then Trump trolled them like two big trolls. One he put out there and says, "Thank you for defending the presidency, saying that there'll be no kings in the United States." That was one of his trolls. And the other one was where he actually gets in a fighter jet and drops poop on all the protesters.
I mean, that is just absurd, isn't it? Quite unbecoming of America's head of state. But it's become, you talk about AOC being smart with social media. This second Trump presidency is he is as well, but this second Trump presidency has been very, very interesting in its social media approach, and it has been quite effective.
If there is a king, he is definitely the king of the troll.
No doubt about that. Yeah.
That is,
I just wanted to go back to her excuse there. Like, I don't think it's appropriate. Isn't it just so sad? This is a trite comment that I'm going to make here, but I'm going to make it anyway. Isn't it so sad that we have that kind of like HR language that's just penetrated every aspect of our lives? I mean, I find it agony, because we started this show talking about George Orwell and politics in the English language. What would George Orwell think of that?
And then, of course, we have to put the queen of the troll up, and she's got the final word today. And she's getting rid of the king. So this king is a very weak king because he allowed the protest to happen, right? And he allowed people to do all kinds of. What kind of king is that? I've seen worse kings. But look what she did to the king. Here, right at the end. Let's play this clip from none other than Nancy Pelosi.
Going to tear up the crown. Going to tear up.
Just like that,
dressed as Big Bird.
Hey, just like that, she ended the kingdom. And there was
like I say, this mythologizing from the Americans. Very,
there was
very
at
silly.
least there was at least 3 people in the background. You could hear them clapping and shouting. Oh, the best Nancy Pelosi one was the other day when she's like, "You just shut up."
Yeah, she's very aggressive, almost, violent, you would have to say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would have to say something, all right.
People talking here about why the north of BC doesn't have many railways. It goes up to Prince George, doesn't it? And that's fairly, I guess, geographically, Prince George is probably in the middle.
Rail. Well, to be fair, I was in... rail, I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but rail can go anywhere too. You just have to put it in the permafrost.
But the thing with rail is it's quite expensive if you don't have people there. If you don't have a town, and there isn't, like, north of PG. Somebody here says Mackenzie.
Port St. John.
If that's true,
Dawson Creek.
I don't actually
Port
know.
St. John is a big
like
center.
North of there aren't really
Fort St. John.
particularly large population centers, are there? So
Fort St. John, Dawson Creek.
But they're not particularly large, are they? They're not like
Fort St. John is fair size.
Big cities.
I lived there. Fort St. John, how big? 20,000 maybe?
That's quite hard to justify building a railway too, though. 20,000 people.
I mean, the railroad's not for people. Let's remember that. The railroad would be for goods.
Yeah, I guess. If you had some kind of commercial enterprise in place.
It has nothing to do with people. They're not going to ship people. It's Fort St. John.
Generally speaking, that's why the Pacific Railroad was built. It was built for people.
Yeah, but
it was built. That's usually what brings it about. Obviously, yeah, you do get commercial railway lines though as well.
That's
Definitely.
all that one through the Bering Strait would be just commercial. It wouldn't be. I mean, maybe they put some people on, maybe. But Fort St. John, 30,000 in the area, 30,000 people, 25,000 for the population itself, and it's an oil and gas capital.
Yeah, just over from Alberta, isn't it, where they have a lot of oil. That part of Alberta, I mean, Fairview and all that. And I can't remember the name of that bit of land that has
Grand Prairie.
Because it's like the last bit of Alberta where you can grow crops, isn't it? Around Fairview and I can't remember the other one. Peace. Do they call it Peace something?
Peace River area. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's where Fort St. John is, isn't it? It's just on the other side of that.
It is. It's west of that. You know, the cool thing is that you have this thing called ChatGPT now. You know, like when somebody tries to tell you
talk.
Someone tells you a typical, you know, lie, you can just look it up, right? Now, Fort Nelson is the westernmost northern terminal, and Quebec and Yukon.
It's almost like an extension of the U.S., isn't it? If you get rid of the border, it's hard to tell where the U.S. stops and Canada starts because it's just an extension of the U.S. population density.
Yeah, and then the permafrost obviously makes it, because, you know, like you get those frost heaves, and if you ever I've driven northern Alberta there in the winter, I think it's like a roller coaster sometimes. Yeah. Anyway.
But this is Canada's Achilles heel, isn't it? It's the fact that the population, like the best comparison to another country that Canada has, or one of the best, is Chile, isn't it? It's like Chile, but turned horizontal. That's what Canada is in many ways. And it's really hard to create transport links thousands of miles across, isn't it? It's kind of... And that's another thing. We talk about Pierre Poilievre and how clear he speaks and things like that. Sometimes he is quite misleading, like when he talks about how Canada's got the most land in the world.
Second.
Like, not really. That's a bit silly.
Second
but he
most
says the
land
most.
mass.
When he sells that point, when he brings up that point, he says we've got the most land in the world, but we house prices are some of the most expensive. That's the way he phrases that point.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how many people that works on, because obviously you can't realistically expect to build suburbs up there in like Nunavut and stuff like that, can you?
Yeah, a lot of the, if you took the density of where most of the population lives, it lives on that bottom little piece, right? That most of the population is right there, smack up against the border. You know?
Yep, and the best part of Canada for expansion, like north and in other directions, is the prairies, isn't it? It's Alberta and Saskatchewan. That's the place where you can grow crops, and it's flat land. I mean, obviously it's pretty cold, but you can theoretically have expansion there and communities there.
Well, most of those communities all sprung up from resources, all from natural resources.
Yep.
And I'm just waiting for this map to load here, and then that's our show. It's 10:30 though too. It's a bit longer show, but we do thank you for bearing with us here. But there is a better tomorrow if we just fight for it. How's that? But Justin Trudeau definitely tried to make himself relevant again this last couple of days. I don't know what he was looking for. Maybe he was trying to show off to his new girlfriend, Katy Perry, the astronaut.
She's had quite an interesting life so far, hasn't she, Katy Perry? Very interesting taste in men.
One tried to be the leader of the free world and tell the world how to operate, and then one tried to tell the world she's an astronaut. The great pretenders.
Well, is it that Russell Brand, like, really, because he was married to her, wasn't he? But he was terrible. The things he said about her, that she was just like immensely dumb or something. Pretty harsh. But I would like to know what kind of conversations they're having.
Yeah, I think somebody said that Russians have railways. Yeah, the Siberia. Like that's the punishment in Russia, right? You make a mess somewhere, they're just like, you're on the next train to Siberia.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Brutal.
And you know, the American version of Siberia is Alaska, except everybody glorifies Alaska. Alaska is beautiful. So maybe Siberia is beautiful. Who knows?
It is very beautiful and very interesting, like fascinating, but it's such difficult terrain. And Alaska has the Pacific coast, doesn't it? And that brings warmer air. So I think it's a bit more tolerable, at least on the coasts in Alaska.
Let me tell you, I've lived up north in minus 75 and minus 50. I don't even know if you notice it. It's just cold. Cold is cold, man.
You probably notice it if you throw water or something and the speed at which it freezes in the air.
I can tell you that the northern lights are absolutely spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. That's our show for today. We're back tomorrow morning, Tuesday at 9 o'clock. I do have, if you're in Kelowna area, I do have a guest in, Sharon Simpson, and she's wants to talk about this deal that the city of Kelowna made with Westcorp. And she's, I guess, really wants to express her thoughts. How's that? That's a nice way to say it. Yeah, I agree with once your nostrils are frozen shut, you don't notice the temperature. Yeah, like I said, I've worked out on the oil rigs in the winter, and I worked in the mill in the winter. We worked till -50, and after that, the chains start snapping, like big chains, like big lugs. They just start snapping in the cold weather. And then if you don't plug your car in, plug it in with a car heater, plug it in with a block heater, you maybe start it in the spring, or you tow it to a garage and maybe you can get it to start. They used to light fires underneath cats and stuff like that. Not kitty cats, but like caterpillars. So they could start to heat up the oil so they could start them. Anyway, that's the show. If you haven't experienced the North, head on up. It could be boom time if they build that tunnel to Siberia.
But you'll have to drive or fly.
Drive or fly, you can do whatever. You can walk if you want.
Sled.
Iditarod. Anyway, cheers. See you tomorrow.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.